That's it. Oh, what are you doing? I don't know what I've hooked here, but anyway.
Don't be a stingray.
It's big. Ah, whatever it is, will be fun. We're getting down to the nitty-gritty now. I've bound most of the guides on. I wasn't going to show you all that because it's too lengthy. These videos are too long anyway. So I'm just going to show you one, demonstrate one, and one of the larger guides because it's a bit easier to see. I'll just give you a quick look. That is where we're up to. Bindings on most of the guides. I've got 2 to go, stripper guide and the first of the standard guides. If that makes sense, hopefully it does. There you go. They haven't had any filler on that over binding for the guides yet. That's the next one to go on. Now you can actually grind or file or that little rise as you go on to the guide feet, and that can make that binding a little bit easier, but keep in mind these are new Fuji guides and they've been pre-ground, so they've already got a nice little incline up as you bind, so they're not too bad. I didn't want to grind them any further, so you can take some more off it to make it a bit easier, but I didn't want to do that because they're painted and that takes the coatings off, of course, and then that leaves them vulnerable to rust. They're stainless and titanium, so they shouldn't rust too much, but they tend to get some rust. Anyway, so I'm not going to grind any of that off. It should work fine without doing that. And that, well, that's how it goes, yeah? Now I'm just going to do this one. I'll demonstrate this one. The big stripper guide will probably need some work. That's there. That one will probably need a little bit more work just to get it a bit of a better angle as you bind up onto the guide feet. It's a big guide, these things, so you know you want to put them on fairly firmly. Anyway, I'll get into it. But for me to pull that thread underneath, I'll start thinking about doing that. So we're just going to tape on that loop as I showed you with when I was doing the underbinding. Same thing, just a loop of thread. As I said, I usually pick a different colour so it's a bit easier to see. Just sticks out, it's a bit easy, basically just easier to see, you know, no big tropical explanation here. Turned into a big thing that it's not. Oh, except remember, Frank, to go underneath the thread instead of over the top. Put that on there. Push it in nice and tight. And we'll just lay the rest of that down with a bit of luck, nice and smoothly. It's going to give me a bit of a hassle for some reason. So we're nearly there. Couple more turns and we will pull that thread underneath the binding and finish it off. Just hand roll the last couple of turns. So we want that to be nice and packed in. And then the tape falls off, which is annoying. Probably a couple more, and I'd say we're just about done. I don't think I can get any more in there. I don't think. Maybe one more. I'll just pack it down so I've got a little bit extra thread there to push up and close. Push into the center and close that binding up a bit. There you go. There you go. All good. Take your tape off, open up the loop a bit. I'll troll it around so you can see it a bit better. A little bit of slack in the thread. Put your finger on it, clamp it. Clamp the thread so it doesn't unwind. Pull that through, and this is where it probably is the hardest is. Trying to find it is a pain. I lost it. There it is. That's a bit hard to see, isn't it? I didn't notice that. How do you do that so you can see? So I've got that. I'm just going to pull the thread through, and I had a disaster. I had a disaster, which is painful. That thread has slipped down. That is not good. That is not good. I probably went one turn too many there. So I'm just gonna there's all sorts of nasty stuff going on here. What the? So I just got to try and work that thread back up to where it should be. I think we got it. Just push that back up where it should be as the last wrap around there. Now I'm going to give that a bit of a tighten up. When you want to tighten that up, pull it diagonally, don't pull it straight. So we're going to pull it that way a little bit, tighten that thread up a bit. That last one. Pack it all down a bit so it's nice and neat. So you want to be able to level all this. Alright. Now I'm just going to pull that square so it's a bit neater. That looks a bit neater, and put a bit of and trim him off. It's just enough to pops back underneath the binding. Just enough pressure on it so it pops back into the binding. Just push those in. Remember, work from the outside to the centre. And you don't want to go crazy pushing it. You just want to level up all those wraps of thread, even them up. There you go, that's one side done. Quickly do the other side. Not too bad, everything looks nice and straight. And it's pretty much the same process. I'll run out of tape. Bits of tape everywhere. Which kind of happens. I might just grab a couple of bits of fresh stuff. It does lose its adhesion a little bit after you've played with it a few times. You know, it's just masking tape. It's meant to come off, that's the whole idea of it. So it doesn't last terribly long if you're handling it all the time. Now pull that up, stick it under the piece of tape, stick it down the bottom here. Get it out where we want to do it. I'm going to bring it at about 5 mil or so. And because that's got, it's going to be a little bit painful. Because that's already got binding, underbinding on it, sometimes it'll just lock into that other binding and get it to grip. Once you get it to grip in there, it's a bit easier to roll it around by hand, line it up, get a couple of wraps on there just to hold that tag end of the binding cotton down. Like so. Now I'm just going to straighten that up a bit. I don't want to pull it too hard because it will come out. Just straighten it up a bit. So nice to get it so it runs nice and true around as you're putting it, using the binding it on. So you just want to get that packed up, neatened up. Just fill around with it a bit. Sometimes it doesn't go perfectly the first couple of wraps you put on there. First couple of wraps, so we just get that. See a few little gaps. Fix them now while you can before you go any further. Because the more you put down, the more wraps you put on there, the harder it is to fix. There we go, getting there. That's probably a bit more than I would like in there, but That's how this little thread pusher comes into its own. It's as I said, you can buy them now. In the olden days, you had to make them all. None of this stuff was on the market that I can remember. You just have to make things to do the job. Alright, that's enough to hold that bit of thread down. Pull him up and snip him off right at the bottom. There we go. Now, hopefully we can as soon as you hit those guide feet, you'll find that it wants to bind back over the other binding because it's got to go up a hill. Push that out a little bit. And pull that one in a bit. Again, it's better to try and adjust it as soon as you can because otherwise it gets to the end, it gets a bit hard to adjust. And going over these guide feet is always slow and a bit tedious sometimes. Just getting them started. Once you get on top of on the main surface of the guide feet, like past the beginning of it, it tends to get a bit easier. Just gonna try and move that all over a bit. It's not as good as I would have liked it, but it's getting there. And the second part, it's a bit of challenge, is you're trying to video this and not make it too long. I'm just going to pack that over as much as I can at the moment, just so I can slide it all over a little bit once I get this almost finished. Well, when it's finished, I'll be able to level it out a bit better. This one's just a little bit more painful than it probably should be, but boy, this one is really being painful. I hate that. I'm trying to show something and it's always the one that plays up the most. Alright. Getting close to the end, so I might stick that cotton in yet. Couple more. Got it. Now we just got to stick the cotton on there to pull that thread through. Put that, wasn't really well done. Put that on there, other one on the other end. Go under the binding when you do it, like that. Hopefully we can just finish that off rather quickly. What I'm doing is leveling that out, get rid of any gaps. That's pretty much it, I think. Now, cut that off. Cut that off. Hold the thread so it doesn't unwind with your finger. Hopefully you can see it a bit better from this side. Roll around a bit more maybe. Put the thread through the eye of the loop. Grab the end with the knot in it and just pull it through gently. And that is just about done. Tighten that up a touch. Bits of thread everywhere. Turn them around a bit, pull them up. And snip him off nice and close to the bottom. Just push that around a bit so it all fit. And we're just going to level that out a bit. Try and get rid of any gaps in the thread. And it will sink into the other thread too. As the filler coat helps to stop that from happening. Yeah, well done, mate. All right. I hope you could see all that. Should have. And there you go. One more to do. And then I'll put some filler on these, on the new binding, give it a coat of filler, and then I can clear coat after that. I'll put 2 coats of filler on top of that, and then clear coat it afterwards. All right, cool. Yeah, hey there, down the shed. I finished off the binding last night. I bound the guides back on, and I'm going to put the clear coat on it tonight. I put a coat of filler on the binding last night. I didn't record that because I'd already showed you earlier when I was doing the underbinding how to do that. It's the same process for putting it over on the overbinding on the guides. So yeah, it's all bound up. Bound up, geez, that's a weird word. Anyway, it's the guides are bound on, and I'm going to put the clear coat on. So that's how she's looking at the moment. Big strip of guides on there. And I've got that on the drying mode at the moment, so it's a slow speed motor that just turns it, and that's where these rod binders are fantastic. I mean, these lathes, you know, they do things like that. And you've got to turn the clear coat continually for the first couple of hours, you know, about 20 minutes of just constant turning, and then, you know, every hour sort of thing, or every half an hour or so, whatever they say after that. So these lathes just keep turning it, so that makes it great. You can put it on there for as long as you like, as long as the power doesn't go off or anything else that causes you an issue. But yeah, so I'm going to put that clear coat on now. It's going down there, you can see it's rotating on the drying motor, and the control's set to dry. Down there, it doesn't have any multi-speeds, it just has one speed on there, which works great. Anyway, I'll mix up this coatings and start applying them. And yeah, hopefully it'll come out great. So hopefully you can see that pretty well. It's a bit hard to get real detailed in it. Anyway, I've got a couple of syringes I'll use to draw up the polymer, epoxy I should say. So, you know, you want equal parts. It's an A and B equal parts job. I've already marked these A and B, so I know which ones to use. It always pays to have a few of these if you're doing this. You know, it just makes life get a nice accurate measurement out of it. So we're going to grab some part A. Make sure you get the right one. That's part A resin. These are only little bottles of Jack Eskin's epoxy. I didn't go out and buy big bottles yet because I wasn't doing enough, but I will go. The next lot will be, I'll get a lot bigger bottle because I'll continue rebuilding rods. I've got a few I've got to do. Might even make a few new ones later on, but initially I'm just going to fix up all the old ones. I've got some great blanks laying around that need to be repaired. Great rods. So we're going to draw up about, I might make it about 4 mil. It does go off, so you know you can take so much and you can just mix up a new batch. You don't want it to, oops, we're getting it everywhere here. Some trouble trying to film things and do stuff like this is So going a bit hard with that one, so I'll just take that back to 4 mil. So I got about 4 mil in there. Hopefully you can see it. I'm using some paper cups because I don't particularly like using plastic. We're going to avoid it. Seems to work all right. Just put that somewhere so it doesn't get all over everything. I'll probably wash it out with a bit of acetone. That's part A. Just check, definitely part A. And I'm going to mix up some part B, and I managed to get it all over my fingers as usual. God, this is hard to get, you can't do this with a close-up, doesn't it? Anyway, draw that up. Just overdraw it a bit and take it down to 4 mil. A bit of air bubbles in there. I've just got some acetone, probably out of shot at the moment, but I'm just going to give it a squeeze and see if that cleans it out. If not, I'll go to an all-purpose thinner. Seems to be doing a good job. I try to get multiple uses out of this stuff because I don't, there's no other way of doing this, I suppose. You can do a medicine, use a medicine glasses, little medicine, cheap plastic medicine cups. If you can get a hold of some, they're pretty good for the job. I'm just trying to be a little bit more environmentally friendly, but the trouble is when you get stuff on these syringes, it takes all the writing, all the measurements off, which is a bit of a bummer. Acetone just takes that off. Out of shot for a second. Always have some rags around. You've got to have some rags. You need to clean up everything. So there you go. Make sure the lids are back on so we don't spill any. And just give that a mix up. Popsicle sticks are great for this stuff. Try not to aerate it very much. You want to mix it, not aerate it. And make it nice, well mixed. Like all sorts of epoxies, you've got to mix it well. And don't go crazy, you can make up a couple of batches, so you don't want to, make a huge batch up and waste it, so better is making small batches up. You probably won't be able to see that, but there's some air bubbles in there, and I'll just leave that set for a second. Just leave that sit for a few minutes, just to get the air to come out of it. And in the meantime, I'll set up for the shot to put some clear coat on. Testing, yep. Well, there you go, hey. Just as I was about to start and clear coating and recording, a good old Brisbane summer storm comes out of nowhere, and we're not the best weather to be doing this, but it seems to be fine. So I've done most of them, and I've been waiting around for the storm to go away, and you'll probably hear in the background a few cracks of thunder and good old tin roof in the shed making a hell of a noise, but I will endeavour to do it anyway. But just treat it as a bit of sound effects or something if you want. Anyway, you get that. Anyway, what I like to do, I've mixed up some more because I ran out. So I don't mind. This has got a drying mode on the lathe, which is good. So you can actually have it rotating. I like to do it this way because it saves me trying to hand rotate the thing as I'm doing it. And all you're doing is more like an applicator than brushing it on. So you just put it on there, run the brush over the top of it, and kind of level it out. And being self-leveling, it'll self-level as it rotates. So you just go off the binding by 5 mil or so. You don't want to go crazy, you just want to put about 5 mil or so off the edge of the binding. It doesn't need heaps. And that'll level itself out. Trying to keep it neat, of course. People like me and your hands shake too much. It's not always a good thing like them. It's even worse when you're trying to do a film. You seem to make better mistakes when you're doing filming. Well, that's alright. As I said, I'm not making a high class game rod. I'm making a bit of a surf rod. So remember, the brush is not brushing, it's just applicator. So we're just gradually putting that around. And we're going to put a pretty big coat. Make sure you get plenty over the top of those guide feet. Just want to get into the binding there, and a nice coat over the top of the feet of the guide. Hopefully I've got enough here. Same on the other end. Trying not to drip it all over the place, which I just did. Just make it with this lot. Now, just trying to put a nice even coat over the whole lot. And being polymer, epoxy, sorry, it'll self-level as it rotates. But you still try and keep it as even as possible, going across or up and down the blank. And I'll dab some in here because it's a bit hard to get at. What I'm trying to do is make sure they get plenty underneath the feet of the guide, because there's a little tunnel under there, a little bit of open space. And this is the trouble with having it in a rotation mode when you're doing this. Not too bad on the big guides, the little guides are a bit harder. Because you're getting into that spaces underneath the guide feet, or underneath the guide, but you can do it. It does save. I find it easier anyway. That's not looking too bad. That's good because I'm pretty much running out of clear coat here. Now just check for any low spots or any weird spot where the binding hasn't been covered and it's showing through the clear coat. That's looking pretty good. Just a little bit there, a little bit over that edge, so we might just drag it up. You can be as crazy particular as you like. The air bubbles seem to have come out of most of it. There may be a few left in there, but you can get that out with a bit of heat. If you're game enough to stick a lighter underneath it, or you can use a heat gun, but it does, as soon as you put some heat on this stuff, it gets really runny. So you have to be very careful of that. Well, it's looking pretty good to me. It's looking pretty good. I just ran out, so that was perfect, in fact. Yeah. It's not looking too bad. So a few air bubbles in there. Probably a bit more heat would be nice. Maybe going forward I will put that in some hot water prior to using the Eskin stuff. It seems to retain the air bubbles more than the old epoxies I had, which weren't Eskins brand. It levels well and it puts a good coat on. But again, you've got to be careful. You don't want to get it too hot, because if you get it too hot, it gets as runny as. Anyway, that's done. It's all clear coated and it looks like it's only going to need one coat, so that'll be great. So probably 3 hours it'll be dry, and you probably should rotate it for about 3 hours at least. And you know, make sure that it is leveling. Check it a few times. If you're doing this by hand, then it's a process of sitting around rolling the blank continually to get it to happen. As the old Ozman would say, here's my face, and I am pretty much done. When I get this out of get it out of the drying machine tomorrow, should be nice and dry by Saturday morning, and I'm taking off up for a beach fish in the caravan on Saturday morning, which is not tomorrow, the next day. So good 24 hours will be nice and dry. And I'm going to take the old girl for a fish, which I'm really looking forward to giving it a swing and seeing how far it casts and how it goes with unweighted pilly and all the rest of it. And you know, I don't know if there's any tail left up at Tiwa Beach, because that's where we're going, but hopefully so. And I might even try for a Jew, which yeah, that would be a big event, because I've caught one in my whole life. It was only a small one, so I wouldn't mind catching a big Jew. That would be good. That's one of those bucket list things, hard things to catch, I tell you. Anyway, some people do better than me, but I've struggled with it. But anyway, we might have a crack at that too. All right, catch you guys. Well, I just tack a little bit on here for clean up. Yes, I use a bit of all-purpose thinners. Seems to clean it up pretty well. So you can flush out the syringes and you can clean your brush, and it seems to do a pretty good job. I came out fairly clean out of that. paper cups, probably not a great idea. I think I might have to get some glass stuff down here or something, just to clean brushes and stuff. At the moment I've only got paper cups down here and not some bottles. So I'll get some bottles organised just for cleaning equipment up into. Yeah, the paper cups don't cope with that all-purpose thinners very well, but that's alright. Anyway, that's a quick hit. Clean up, bit all-purpose thinners, buy it at Bunnings. Does the job.